Hi there, thanks for tuning in to another watercolor demo. Today we're painting another boat, and this is a ship actually. This is the Crown Princess Martha. She's serving as a hostel since a few years here in Stockholm. And I'm gonna start putting in some drawing here, just the basic shapes. This is a quite attractive subject with a big defining shape, with a dark ship hull here to the right, or just right of center in the view. And we have a nice, cool, clear spring day when I shot this reference photo. So I want to try and capture that sort of high, clear air and bright sunlight. We have quite a lot of bright sunlight reflecting on the bridge of the ship. We're going to use that to our advantage and work with contrast and trying to just bring out that light as usual. Just putting in the most necessary detail here, some of the riggings and masts, some of the ropes, bridge. And I'm going to add a figure here a little bit up close. There are a couple of figures in the reference photo, but they're quite far away, so I want to bring this guy more up close. And yeah, just some random figure. Maybe it's a jogger. A lot of people are running along this pier usually. So just putting this guy in here. Hopefully it will bring some life to the subject, to have some people moving around in it. And some trees, just outlining roughly where they are. This phase of the drawing, it's putting in the most essential lines that you have as a guide when you're painting, but it's also part of the planning. So when I draw this, I start thinking about what I'm going to do with the painting, what I'm going to accentuate, what I'm going to leave out, and so on. So it's part of the planning and sort of strategy process for the painting. So moving on to some painting. Just gonna wet the paper a little bit here. And starting with light values, as usual. Mixing up here some white, some lemon yellow, some yellow ochre. That's hopefully gonna be a good base for these rigs or masts. Bit of a challenge with this subject is that we have a very nice deep blue sky behind those light yellow masts on the ship. So I'm gonna try my best to paint around those masts without having the sky being all patchy. But we'll see how it works out. It's always a bit of an adventure when you start painting, and watercolor is chaotic, and you just have to roll with it. Try to be confident and have faith that you'll end up with something nice. Putting in the trees here, at least the sort of first wash on the trees, just a light brownish tone. So remember, this is in the spring, the leaves have yet to come out, so the trees are just starting to pop some buds, and they are brownish yellowish. There's behind the trees there's some building with a terracotta or a reddish roof that I'm putting in slightly. This red here on the ship hull is quite attractive. I think it's smack bang in the focal area of the painting and the point of interest. So we're going to be working quite a lot to bring out the most of that part of the subject. This red here is also nice because it's sort of the one pigment that breaks off from the otherwise quite earthy set of pigments I'm using for this. The palette is quite limited as usual. A lot of earthy tones, a lot of yellow ochre, French ultramarine, burnt umber, and so on. But I will bring in some quite strong red on the ship there towards the borderline. just to energize the subject a little bit. And the pier here is just some random dirty mixture of whatever I found on my palette. Some gray. I'll come in later with some other hues perhaps, but this is not our point of interest in the painting, so won't do too much in this area. I'm working with a squirrel mop brush now, which is good when you paint with a lot of water in it at this phase. And I will move to synthetic brushes with that hold less water as I move over to painting with deeper values and thicker mixtures with less water. This is just nonsense, essentially just trying to achieve some sense of texture here on the pier. Taking off some excess water. While I'm at it, I might just put in some skin tones on the figure up close here. It's going to be quite light, that part, so I'm doing it at this point. So just some orangey type hues here, where you have the face and the hands of that guy who's out jogging along the water. Wetting the painting again to keep those washes alive. I want to keep working wet and wet for some time. And I'm working on dry paper, so adding a bit of spray as you go is quite helpful to keep your washes alive for a bit longer. So you don't get the paper, otherwise the paper will just soak up all that water quite quickly. So moving on to work on the sky here, and I'm going to need a lot of cobalt blue. Fairly rich mixture here with a lot of pigment in it. And sort of loosely working around those trees. Don't mind if they blend and mix a fair bit. We want to sort of soft edges around trees. But here I have that challenge I mentioned before, that to paint around those masts without making a mess. I would probably make a mess anyway, but whatever, it's not, hopefully not gonna destroy the painting. What I could do here is use some masking fluid to just protect those masts when I paint the sky, but yeah, I don't have a lot of patience every time I paint, so I guess this time around I'm just gonna try and paint around it and roll with the punches if I mess up. Some splatter here to just emphasize the sense of patchy leaves and branches on those trees. And you can see I already start to mess up the masts on the ship here. Pretty much expected that to happen, so, but no big deal. I'm happy to share my mistakes. Bringing in some cobalt turquoise into my brush here as I move further down in the sky. So the sky is quite cool and yeah, more or less plain cobalt blue on top, and it becomes warmer and slightly more greenish towards the horizon. Just gonna lift out that excess water. We don't want that to stay there for too long. You'll have those weird shadows in the sky surrounding the masts. About to finish up the sky here. So I'm working a lot with the pigment I happen to have on the palette, and just adding red, blues, and browns from whatever pigments I'm using for this painting, and trying to get the hues I need. But I don't obsess over the hues. I mean, they don't have to be exactly the way they are in real life or the reference photo. As long as the main story comes across, I'm quite happy to use whatever is on my palette. And also using the sort of the gunk that ends up on your palette over time is, I think it helps you to get a coherent painting where most of the hues are part of some kind of unity. If you use a lot of different pigments, I think there's a chance that you end up with a much less coherent and unified painting. Just too lively, and I like to stay pretty use quite dull hues in my paintings. And you can see me, I'm really struggling here with these masks. I'm trying to get them back with some opaque white and some yellow again, and bring them back. And yeah, it's working kind of, I guess, but we'll just leave it at that, and let it be part of the charm with this painting, that we allow for a lot of imperfection. Watercolor has to be like that, I think. So the first wash is starting to dry up now. The sky actually looks a little bit pale. I might have to go back in there. Just gonna put in this part here is gonna be light gray later, but might as well put a thin wash over that now. Preparing a lot darker wash or mixture here for the hull of the ship. And to get it thoroughly dark, I'm using indigo as my base. Indigo is a rather cold, bluish, blackish pigment, and it's very rich. So if you want to go extremely dark, I like to use it. Otherwise, my darks are usually a mix of French ultramarine and burnt umber, but if you want to go extremely dark and just have some variation in your life, then I think indigo is good, and you can mix indigo with sepia to have your darks range from cold to warm. And this is one of those occasions where I don't really know if I'm gonna bother with painting around those ropes coming out of the ship hull there, or if I'm gonna put them over with the opaque paints later. For now, I'm gonna try to paint around them, but if I mess up, I can fix that with some opaques later. So I'm just slightly varying my hue here, but by introducing more or less sepia in my palette. So the hull will be a slightly warmer on the side that's facing the pier. We have those trees casting some warmish light, or slightly and perhaps reflecting a little bit in the hull, so trying to achieve that. Just painting around this these little details that are just next to the ship on the pier. There will be some white fuzzy little dots and blips and things there to catch your attention, but without being, like too detailed, or actually allowing you to get stuck looking at that part. So it's just going to be a sense of busyness, I guess. And the roof here on the bridge is quite dark, so I'm putting in the same mixture as I used for the hull to achieve a fairly strong contrast towards that white painted part of the bridge. Now I'm dulling down the reflected part of the hull here to make sure that it's you can see here in the reference photo it's quite a lot darker than the part that's above the water that's being reflected. It's also quite a lot more red. It's got a more vivid red, so I need to go back in with more red here. Quite common mistake to let your initial wash be too light, and then it fades as it dries, and you have to go back in with more pigments. But as long as you don't fiddle around and obsess too much about it, you can adjust for these things without muddying things up, I think. It's always nice to get a wash perfectly accurate in the first go, but in the end you're responsible for creating a nice painting, so everything's acceptable if you achieve that. Going back into the trees here with some fairly dry brush strokes with a really messed up old synthetic brush here, just trying to get a bit more life into that and also increase the value. So we need those trees to be a bit darker to aid with the contrast and really make that bridge on the ship pop out. And we want those trees to be a silhouette against the sky in the background. So the values are always important. Time to deal with the water and the reflections. And here I'm a bit more careful. This is gonna hopefully be a nice effect, and it's gonna be right where we want the viewer's attention. We want to make the most of this, keeping our brush marks calligraphic and be mindful of stroke economy. And I think these simple like reflection painting like this, it's not too complicated. Just need to avoid creating too repetitive shapes in the water, and also try to think about a little bit about vanishing point and perspective. So the waves have slightly different angles to them as we come towards the bottom of the painting, whilst closer to the horizon they are more horizontal. What I'm doing here is just a little bit unconventional, so I'm putting in the reflection of the ship's hull before I've painted the water itself. Perhaps you will typically do it the other way around. You paint the sort of the blue water and then you add reflections on top of that. But doing this as a bit of an experiment. I've done it a few times before, and what I'm hoping for is that when I go in with the blue for the water, it will slightly dissolve the edges of these reflection marks and just make them a little bit softer around the edges. And that can be a nice convincing effect sometimes. But I vary my technique here. And you can see I have completely failed to paint around that rope as I anticipated, but that's okay. We'll use some opaque pigments towards the end and repair that. I would much rather have a nice flow in my painting than trying to preserve or paint negatively around every little detail like that. Putting in some shadows here on the hull as well, which is a quite nice way to have things tie together in the image. And now I'm gonna put in some shadows here on the pier. Again, we have those trees to the left, and those continue outside of our view to the left, past us, but they throw these cast shadows into the scene. And that helps us in several ways. It provides something to paint on the sidewalk there, and they give us a sense that there's a world outside of this scene. So there's more to it than we see here, and I think that's helpful to create immersion. We're also going to take the opportunity to add a bit more of these shadows as we come towards the lower part of the painting, and provide sort of a more shaded area closer to the spectator, and that helps to lead your eyes into the painting. Putting some clothes on this runner that's facing us. And as you note, I've painted through this figure and the drawing up until now, because I knew that the figure was going to be darker than all the stuff I put in before. So there's no need to paint around him or anything, just paint through him and then go over with some darker pigments later. And there's another figure in the background here, actually, that's further away. Just a shape indicating a torso and a couple of legs. I like to make the legs, one leg a little bit shorter than the other. It creates a sense of movement. So again, as I mentioned, I'm putting in a bit more of these cast shadows towards the bottom here to just have a darker base here to lead our eyes into the painting. Time to put in the water now, and we'll see if that trick works that I mentioned, painting over those reflections. Important to go sufficiently deep here in the values, so I'm using a fair amount of cobalt blue and some cobalt turquoise. And here it's also important to ensure that you go sufficiently dark towards the bottom of the painting, because you have less of that sky reflecting, and the water will look a lot darker towards the bottom of the painting. This is also an opportunity to put in some wet strokes to indicate some smoother variations in the reflections in the water. A few more details to add here, just some bits and pieces on the ship there. Nothing to obsess about. I basically just put in the things I can see if I really squint my eyes and look at the reference photo. So just a few shaded areas on these masts to define the shapes of them a little bit more. And I think at this point you can see that the mess I made with the negative painting with the sky around the mast, it doesn't really become much of a problem. At least I don't think so. You can see that those are masts on this ship, and we have no reason to really investigate that part of the subject more than we do. So a bit stronger orange here on the shaded side of the face and legs of the runner. Again, when you have strong direct sunlight, you will have pretty strong shadows on the back side of surfaces and structures and people. Whilst if this was a more cloudy day, you will have more ambient light that sort of reflects towards the backside that's not facing the sun. So those are little tricks to communicate sort of the story more clearly. So strong shadows tells us that we have a very strong light and a clear sky. And just indicating these cast iron chains and things that the boats are anchored to. I just want to add a little bit more that dark towards the bottom here. Perhaps fiddling a little bit too much with this, but yeah, I think it will work in the end. The water is still moist. That part of the paper is still moist, so I can put in some of these additional waves. Again, not allowing myself to let the water be too light towards the bottom of the painting. But it's always a temptation to paint sort of every wave that you see in the reference photo, and that's usually not a good idea. So count your brush strokes. Time for the final and very satisfying pass, moving in with the opaque white here, and I'm using some of the muck on my palette to tone it down a little bit. I don't want it to be too bright white. These ropes are a little dirty, yellowish in tone. I'm painting with quite dry brush marks to leave a lot of imperfections. These lines are great for tying the subject together and connecting shapes. But if you paint them too complete with without any little gaps or anything, they just look very stiff. You lose the sense of life, essentially, in your subject. That's something I think about basically whenever it comes to painting lines in subject. I always leave a little bit of gaps, or use dry brush technique to ensure that they don't they mustn't look too perfect. Because when stuff looks perfect, you just I think you just tend to scrutinize those parts of the painting more. Whilst if there are sort of there are little gaps and imperfections in them, you're quite happy to just move on and look at the rest of the painting. Some highlights on the figures here, that will just define them a bit more against the background. Some of these lines get a little touch of white as well. And it's very easy to get carried away with this opaque white, so I should probably call it a day quite soon. I will just put little white lines and dots all over the place. And we don't need that. I think that will have to do. It's looking quite okay now. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and I see you in the next video.